It was one of those gray, slow-burning afternoons that hung over New Jersey like a damp sweater. The kind of day that smelled like rust and wet pavement, where everything felt like it was running 10 seconds behind. I was supposed to meet up with Miles at his family's garage to help sort through some old equipment his mom wanted cleared out before the next shipment. Nothing major, just a couple of dusty toolboxes, a broken floor, jack maybe a shelf or two. I wasn't expecting much, just another way to kill time during a summer that already felt halfway wasted. Miles had texted me that morning. Mom wants to reorganize the back room. You down to help? I said sure without thinking. I didn't have anywhere better to be. By the time I got there, the rain had just started, not hard, but steady enough to soak your hoodie in 5 minutes if you stood still. The air smelled like motor oil and pine cleaner. The garage was one of those old corner shops that had probably been there since the 80s, cracked concrete floors, corrugated tin walls, and a flickering strip of overhead lights that buzzed louder than the radio. Miles was already inside, halfway buried in a pile of cardboard boxes. He looked up and waved, grinning. Thought you'd ditch, he said. I shrugged. Didn't have an excuse good enough. We worked in the back half of the shop where the shelving was older than either of us and sagged under the weight of junk no one had touched in years. The space smelled like damp rags and forgotten rubber. It was quiet except for the rain tapping on the roof and the occasional hum of passing cars out on the road. That's when Claire walked in. She wasn't dressed up or anything, just a faded blue button-up that was too big on her sleeves rolled up past her elbows, and a pair of old jeans that had grease stains around the knees. Her hair was tied back in a lazy bun, a few damp strands sticking to her neck. She looked tired, not the kind of tired that comes from lack of sleep, but the kind that settles into your shoulders and stays there. Still, she carried herself like someone who knew where every tool in the room belonged. Morning, Leo, she said, tossing a pair of work gloves my way. Appreciate you helping out. No problem, I replied, slipping them on. Beats sitting at home. She gave a half smile and moved past me to lift a heavy metal shelf with both hands grunting slightly as she shifted its position. I'd known Claire since I was 12. She was always kind in a reserved way, polite but firm-focused. After her husband passed, she took over running the garage full-time, never missed a beat. I'd never thought of her as anything other than Miles's mom until that day. We were clearing out a corner rack when it happened. She leaned over to grab a box of wrenches, and the edge of the shelving caught her shirt a sharp little corner that tore the fabric just above her shoulder. She didn't flinch, just looked down and laughed. Well, that's what I get for wearing this old thing, she said, brushing dust off her arm. I chuckled too, not really thinking, but when I looked up, I saw the tear and then her bare shoulder beneath it, smooth, a little freckled, like someone who used to spend summers outdoors but hadn't in a while. Claire caught me looking, not long, a second, maybe less, but something in her expression softened, not embarrassed, not surprised, just aware. Then she laughed again and moved past it like nothing. I went to lift another box, something heavier this time. Halfway up, my grip slipped, and I stumbled back, landing awkwardly on one knee. You good? She asked, already walking toward me. Yeah, I said, brushing off my jeans, just being dramatic. She extended a hand to help me up. It should have been nothing, just a reflex, a polite gesture, but the second her hand closed around mine, something shifted. Her grip was warm, strong, but gentle. She didn't pull right away, and the weird thing was, she didn't meet my eyes. She kept looking off to the side like the moment wasn't really happening, or like she was trying not to let it show. I stood up slowly, and when our hands finally were let go, my fingers felt like they still remembered hers. Claire smoothed her shirt down, glancing once at the tear near her shoulder. Let's not tell Miles about this, she said, her voice low but quieter than before. He'll think I can't dress myself anymore. I gave a small nod, trying to smile. Don't worry, secret's safe. She looked at me again, just for a breath, and then she turned away. We worked for another hour, but the rhythm was off. I kept catching myself watching her. Not in an obvious way, I hoped, but noticing things I hadn't before, the way she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear with the back of her wrist, the curve of her back when she leaned over the workbench, how her voice dropped just a little when she talked to herself, muttering about bolts or inventory. I hated that I noticed, and I hated how natural it felt to notice. Miles didn't seem to pick up on anything. He spent most of the time arguing with a rusted socket set that refused to come apart. When we finally wrapped up, the rain had gotten heavier. Claire handed me a towel to dry off and thanked me again before disappearing into the office. As I left the garage, I realized I hadn't said much the whole afternoon, but my chest was tight, like I'd held my breath through the last hour without knowing it. That night, I lay in bed with my eyes open, replaying that moment, the sound of fabric tearing her laugh, the way her hand closed around mine, and then her voice quiet and close. Let's not tell Miles about this. Just that, but it stuck. For the next 7 nights, I didn't sleep right once. After that afternoon in the garage, the laugh, the torn shirt, the way her hand closed around mine, things didn't go back to normal, but they didn't exactly change either. Not in the loud, obvious way. Miles had picked up more shifts at the parts store, so it was usually just Claire and me during the late afternoons. We'd clean out drawers, rearrange shelving, try to figure out what tools still worked and what belonged in the dumpster. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't, but the silence wasn't empty. She started letting me unlock the front gate, left a key for me, tucked behind the breaker box, a small thing maybe. But I felt it, that shift, that quiet trust. And she started bringing me coffee, always the same one sugar, no cream. She never asked how I took it, just handed me the cup, as if she'd known all along. Once she left a powdered donut on top of my toolbox, no note, just the donut still warm. Thanks, I said, catching her eye across the garage. She didn't say anything, just smiled, that soft half smile she always wore when she didn't want to explain herself. There were moments, small stray ones, where something pulled tight between us, like when she reached over me to grab a wrench and her shoulder brushed mine, or the time I handed her a rag and our fingers touched for half a second longer than necessary. They were little things, but they stuck. I didn't know what they meant, maybe nothing, maybe everything, but I couldn't stop noticing. One afternoon, while wiping grease off an old vise, she asked, Leo, do you ever feel like you're just floating through? I looked up from the bench, floating like you're living, but not really building anything, just passing through the days, waiting for something that doesn't come. She didn't look at me when she said it, just kept folding the rag in her hands like it was a habit she hadn't kicked. I hesitated. Yeah, I do sometimes. She nodded quiet, then placed the rag on the shelf and walked to the back without saying another word. That question lived in my head for days. It was the first time she'd opened a door I hadn't known was there. Claire wasn't someone who overshared. Most of what I knew about her was secondhand things Miles had said in passing, that she liked jazz, that she hated New Year's, that she used to paint but hadn't touched a brush in years. But when we worked together, I started seeing the cracks, the quiet sighs, the way her eyes lingered on the doorway when Miles was late, how she'd pause sometimes mid-movement, like she was remembering something too heavy to say out loud. I never asked, I just stayed close. One Thursday, the rain came down hard, loud on the tin roof like 1,000 small fists. Miles had called in sick. Claire and I were supposed to reorganize the supply wall. She showed up in an old hoodie, hair tied up face bare. She looked tired, but not in a bad way, just soft around the edges. I made extra, she said, handing me a thermos coffee stronger than usual. We didn't do much that day, just sat in the back corner, surrounded by half-open boxes and tangled cords. The shop smelled like damp cardboard, and the cinnamon muffin she pulled from her coat pocket and split with me. At some point, she sat cross-legged on the floor, elbows on her knees, sipping coffee like we weren't in a greasy garage, but in some quiet cabin hidden from the world. You know, the first time I ever changed a spark plug, she said, glancing up at me, I cried, thought I broke the whole car. I laughed. Seriously? She nodded. Your age, maybe younger. My husband showed me how. I got my fingers all cut up, oil on my jeans, and I swore I'd never. She held up her hands smudged with grime. I used to be scared of getting dirty, she added, then looked down at her lap. Now I'm more afraid of feeling too much. The words sat in the air like the smell of rain, quiet clinging. I didn't say anything right away. Eventually I asked, is that why you stopped painting? Her eyes flicked toward me, caught off guard maybe, but not angry. Maybe, she said, or maybe life just took a different shape. She didn't elaborate. I didn't push. We sat there a while, listening to the rain. Our knees were almost touching. I didn't know if I was the one inching closer or if she was, but I didn't move away. She didn't either. When she looked at me again, her expression wasn't guarded. It was open, and something in my chest tightened, not in a painful way, just real. I remember the way her thumb circled the rim of her cup, the tiny scab near her elbow, the strand of hair that slipped loose from her bun and clung to her neck. I noticed everything I shouldn't have, but I did. A few days later, she asked me to help her lift an old compressor. It was heavier than we expected. We both bent down at the same time, hands brushing as we reached for the same side. She paused, looked at me. Her face was close, closer than it should have been. "Go ahead," she said quietly, pulling back half an inch. "You've got it." But her voice was softer, less sure. As we carried it across the floor, I could feel her body move in rhythm with mine, her arm brushing mine with every step. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. When we set it down, we both exhaled at the same time, and for a second we laughed, not because it was funny, but because the tension had to go somewhere. She wiped her hands on her jeans and looked at me again, something unreadable in her expression. "Thanks," she said, her voice almost a whisper. After that, everything felt louder in the silence. Every time she walked past me and didn't touch my arm, I noticed. Every time she did just a light graze, like a brush of her palm as she handed me something, I noticed even more. We never said anything. We didn't need to, but I could feel it, that thing growing between us, quiet, careful, a little dangerous. I started waking up thinking about her, not in the way I used to think about people. Not in flashes or fantasies, just her, the way she moved, the way she stood with one hand on her hip and the other holding a wrench hair in a messy knot, grease on her cheek, and still somehow the most composed person in the room. I started remembering the sound of her laugh when no one else was around to hear it, how it dropped a little lower in tone like it was just for me. One evening I came in early and found her sitting alone on the edge of the workbench, staring out the open garage door. The sun was setting streaks of pink and gray across the sky, the air warm and still. "I used to hate this place," she said, voice barely above the hum of the fan. "Felt like it stole time from everything else." "And now?" I asked, leaning against the wall. She turned to me, then eyes steady. "Now it's the only place I don't feel watched." Her gaze held mine for a moment too long. Then she looked away. Later that night, as we locked up, our hands met on the door. Neither of us moved. She looked at me, her fingers still lightly resting on mine. "Drive safely," she said, her voice quiet. I nodded, but I didn't move my hand, not right away, and again she didn't pull hers back. When she did, it was low, careful, like she didn't want to disturb something fragile between us, something that wasn't ready to break, but wasn't quite whole either. I walked to my car with my pulse in my ears, and her name tucked somewhere I wasn't supposed to keep it. It was one of those warm Saturdays in early August, when the air feels like it's been sitting still for hours. Miles had plans with his girlfriend, something about her cousin's barbecue, so it was just Claire and me at the shop. She'd asked me the day before if I could help her reorganize the overhead lighting in the back bay. A few of the bulbs were flickering, and she wanted to swap them out before the new mechanics started next week. I said yes without hesitation. I think we both knew what that meant. The garage was quiet when I arrived. The metal door rolled halfway up to let in the fading afternoon light. Claire was already there, tying her hair back, sleeves pushed up, one foot on a stool, as she scrolled through her phone. When she saw me, she smiled, tired but kind, like I was a familiar relief after a long day. "Hey," she said, tucking her phone away. "You still up for climbing ladders and pretending not to fall?" "Long as you promise not to laugh if I eat it," I said, grinning. She smirked. "No promises." We spent the first half hour gathering tools and dragging the old aluminum ladder across the concrete. She handed me a headlamp, her fingers brushing my wrist as she clipped it into place. "Looks good on you," she said, stepping back. I laughed. "Stylish, right?" But the way she was looking at me wasn't a joke. It lingered, not long, but enough for my chest to tighten. She looked away, first clearing her throat. "You want me to hold the base while you're up there?" she asked. "Yeah, that would help." The ladder wasn't high, maybe 8 feet, but the ceiling panels were awkward, and the heat made the air thick. I climbed slowly, balancing the new LED fixture on my shoulder. Claire stood below, one hand on the ladder, the other lightly on my ankle to steady me. It should have felt professional, normal. It didn't. Her touch was light but grounded, firm, but careful, like she knew exactly what she was doing and exactly how it might make me feel. My hands shook a little more than they should have while I worked. I swapped the fixture and climbed down slowly, careful not to trip. As soon as my feet hit the floor, I turned toward her, and she was closer than I thought. We were standing just a breath apart, eyes meeting in the kind of silence that usually makes people step back, but we didn't. Her face was flushed from the heat, a few strands of hair falling loose near her jaw. There was a smudge of dust across her cheek, and for some reason I wanted to brush it away with my thumb. Instead, I just said thanks. For what? She asked quietly. For holding me up. Claire looked at me like she wanted to say something. Her lips parted, then closed again, and then she gave me the smallest nod, eyes flicking down, then back up. Anytime. I didn't mean to say it, not out loud, but it came out before I could stop it. I haven't stopped thinking about that day. Her expression didn't change right away, but something in her shoulders softened. I know, she said, voice low and then softer. I haven't either. It was like the air shifted around us. Neither of us moved, not at first, but then she reached up just slightly and adjusted the collar of my shirt, her fingers brushing the side of my neck. Her hand stayed there, barely resting, warm, real. Our eyes didn't leave each other, and I leaned in slow, careful, giving her space to turn away. But she didn't. Her forehead touched mine first, a small, intimate closeness that made the rest of the world drop away. My hands hovered at her waist, not touching, not yet. She breathed out almost like a sigh. Her lips were so close I could feel them move before they touched mine. The kiss was quiet, uncertain, but not hesitant. It was the kind of kiss you give when you've been thinking about it for too long. Soft, slow, and charged with everything unspoken. Her hand slid to my jaw. My palm found the small of her back. We didn't pull each other close, not completely. There was still space between us, the space where everything wrong lived and everything right waited. When we broke apart, we didn't move. She looked at me, eyes open, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. We can't, she started. I nodded. I know, but I know. We sat down on the floor, backs against the garage wall, surrounded by tools and the echo of what just happened. Neither of us said much. She picked at a thread on her jeans. I traced circles on the concrete with my boot. After a while, she said, I don't regret it, but I don't know what it means. Me neither, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just that, nothing more. And we stayed like that long after the sun disappeared behind the trees outside, after the garage cooled and the world started up again. When we finally got up, she didn't speak, neither did I. But when I left, I could still feel her lips on mine and her hand on my chest just before we let go. After that kiss in the garage, I didn't see Claire for 3 days. No texts, no calls, not even a note on the shop calendar where she usually scribbled reminders for parts deliveries and oil change appointments. It was like she disappeared into the quiet parts of herself, the ones she never let anyone see. Miles was around, of course, oblivious, cheerful in his usual way. He made jokes about how his mom had suddenly gotten super busy with paperwork and probably just wanted a break from the garage. I nodded along, tried to match his tone, but something in me felt off balance. I didn't blame her, not really. If I were her, I might have done the same. What happened between us, it wasn't nothing, it wasn't casual, but it also wasn't something either of us had planned. I knew that much. Still, the silence stung in a way I hadn't expected, and even though I didn't want to admit it, I caught myself watching the garage office every time I passed by, hoping for a glimpse of her through the dusty window, the shadow of her silhouette, her voice behind the door. Nothing. Then Miles asked me, we were walking out of a diner after lunch, the kind of summer afternoon where the pavement felt like it could crack under your shoes. He squinted at me under the sun. Hey, he said, is my mom okay? The question stopped me. What do you mean? She's just been weird lately, like she's avoiding everything, even me. I hesitated, then said, she's probably just tired. You know, she works too much. Yeah, he said, but I could tell he didn't buy it. Still feels different. He looked at me again, this time a little longer, not suspicious, not yet, just searching. I looked away. That evening, I went back to the garage after hours, told myself I'd left my watch there, even though I knew it wasn't true. The lights were off when I arrived. The air smelled like rain had passed through earlier, leaving behind that earthy, metallic smell that sticks to concrete floors. The door creaked when I pushed it open, and there she was, Claire standing by the back bay and arms crossed, staring out the open roll-up door like she was waiting for something or someone. She didn't flinch when she heard me. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said, her voice quiet, even no sharp edges, just tired. "I left something," I replied, even though we both knew it was a lie. She turned then, slowly in the half-light. She looked exactly the same and completely different. The same woman I'd known for years, hair tied loosely, sleeves rolled up, grease smudged on her forearm, but the air around her felt heavier now, like she was holding something in. "I've been trying to forget it," she said, eyes on me. I didn't answer. She took a step forward, then stopped. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "But I can't, and I don't think you can either." I took a breath, but it came out shallow. "I haven't." Her stare looked up. There was no smile, no softness, just truth. She nodded slowly. "There are things," she said, "that shouldn't last long, but maybe they shouldn't be erased either." My chest tightened. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. I just, I needed to see you to know you didn't hate me for it." She blinked slowly, then stepped closer. "I could never hate you, Leo." The way she said my name quiet sure made something in me want to fall forward and stay there. But I didn't move. Neither did she. For a few long seconds, we just stood there, not speaking, not reaching for anything, letting the silence be what it was. Heavy, sad, unfinished. Then she turned back to the doorway, arms still folded. "I need time," she said, "just a little to figure out what this is or isn't." I nodded. "I'll wait." She didn't look back, but just before I left, as I stepped out into the humid air, she spoke again, low, barely above a whisper, "Don't forget it happened." I turned, but she was already facing away. The door swung shut behind me, and for the first time I realized how long that kiss would live in me, not like a memory, but like a question I'd keep asking long after she stopped answering. Summer ended like it always does, quietly, without permission. One week we were still sweating through our shirts in the garage, and the next the breeze started to shift. The air felt cooler in the mornings, the sky turned pale earlier in the day, and I had to pack. Going back to school didn't feel like a beginning this time. It felt like stepping out of something unfinished, like turning the last page of a book without realizing it was the end. Claire didn't say goodbye, and I didn't either. I thought maybe I'd see her in the garage that last day, thought maybe she'd be there when I came to pick up the tool bag I'd left behind. But the office door stayed closed, the lights were off, so I drove away without knocking. No promises, no explanation, just a silent understanding that whatever we had, whatever it was, needed to stay there, tucked into that space behind the shelves, between boxes, between moments. We never spoke aloud. Fall came and went. I buried myself in school, late nights, early mornings, deadlines I didn't care about. I saw Miles a couple times, texts, quick calls, nothing deep. He never mentioned his mom, and I never asked, but I thought about her more than I meant to. I thought about her hands, the way they moved when she folded rags or tightened bolts. I thought about the freckle just under her jaw, the one I hadn't noticed until that day on the floor when she tilted her head to listen, and I couldn't look away. I remembered the sound of her laugh, low and unguarded, like it had surprised even her. And sometimes, more often than I'd admit, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with her voice still echoing, "Don't tell anyone about today," like a thread pulled tight across my chest. Then winter came, a cold, dry kind of winter. The kind that made everything brittle, dead leaves, dry skin, words that stayed stuck in the back of your throat. It was late one night, just after 1:30 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a paper I didn't care about, when my phone lit up. Unknown number, one message. "Garage still has the light on in case you are nearby. Claire." I didn't respond, didn't type anything, didn't even open the message. I just stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to go, to get in the car, drive the familiar route, in the quiet dark, pull up to the shop and see her standing there, arms crossed, hair loose, waiting like no time had passed, but I didn't move. I sat there frozen in that moment between want and shouldn't, and slowly the screen dimmed again. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there thinking about the rain from that first day, how it tapped against the tin roof while we laughed, while she pulled me to my feet. Her fingers still wrapped around mine, how the fabric of her shirt tore, and we both pretended it wasn't something more. I remembered the way she looked at me, not long, not boldly, but like she saw something she shouldn't have and didn't look away. And even now, months later, I could still feel the warmth of her hand, still hear the softness in her voice, still feel the press of her lips when the world got too quiet to deny it. We never named what we had. It wasn't a relationship. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't even a mistake. It was just something that happened. Something that lived in the quiet places we didn't talk about. A part of me, a part of her, a shared silence. Sometimes that's all something has to be. Even now, back in my apartment, surrounded by people who don't know any of it, I catch myself glancing at my phone, not because I expect a message, but because a part of me still wants one. Sometimes I walk past a garage on campus and catch the smell of oil and dust, and it makes my chest ache. It reminds me of her, of us, of something that never quite began and never really ended. And that's the part that stays, the part you don't forget. The story of Leo and Claire offers a deeply moving life lesson. The most transformative moments often live in the unspoken fleeting connections that challenge our understanding of ourselves and others. Their shared moments in the garage, from a torn shirt to a quiet kiss, reveal how vulnerability can spark profound bonds, even when they're complicated by circumstance. Claire's openness about her fears and Leo's willingness to stay present show us that true connection doesn't always need words. It thrives in mutual understanding and shared silence. Yet their story also teaches us the weight of restraint. Sometimes the deepest feelings must remain unacted upon to protect what matters most. This delicate balance between longing and responsibility resonates with anyone who's ever felt caught between heart and duty. It reminds us to cherish the quiet, unguarded moments that shape us, even if they don't lead to forever. Life's beauty often lies in its impermanence, in the things we carry quietly within us. For those who've experienced a moment that changed them without explanation, this story is a testament to the power of presence and the courage to let go. What's a moment that left a mark on your heart without a clear beginning or end? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. If this touched you, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join our community. Let's keep exploring the quiet, powerful moments that make us human.